Darkcast Network. Out of the shadows comes the best of indie podcasts. From dolls that seem to move on their own, to cursed playthings with sinister pasts, we're exploring the eerie tales of toys that refuse to stay put. Are these just legends, or is there something truly haunting lurking in the toy box? My name is DJ, and this is the Mythical True Crime Podcast. A killer toy or doll is a stock character in horror fiction. Audiences around the world know of the trope. They include toys, dolls, ventriloquist dummies that seem to come to life and seek to kill or otherwise carry out some evil malevolence. The killer toy subverts the association of childhood with innocence and lack of agency while invoking the uncanny nature of the lifelike toy. Killer toy fiction often invokes ideas of companionship and the corruption of children, sometimes taking place in a dysfunctional or single-parent home. They have historically been associated with occultism and spiritual possession. However, in modern times, artificial intelligence is becoming more common. A haunted doll is a handmade or manufactured doll or stuffed toy that is claimed to be cursed or possessed in some way. According to several historians, the concept of malevolent dolls gained attention in the 20th century when film and entertainment technologies was able to realistically portray safely inanimate dolls as dangerously animated. 19th century precursors to the killer toy include productions of The Sandman and The Adventures of Pinocchio, both of which were experimenting with the idea that a puppet's identity becomes more human-like. Many American children's stories in the late 19th century specifically emphasized dolls, sometimes marketing themselves as being written by the doll themselves. These stories acknowledge the bond between children and dolls and the personification of dolls by children, both of which would be subverted later into the killer toy fiction. Ventriloquist dummies served as some of the earliest examples of unnatural toys in horror films, being established with Otto in the musical drama The Great Gabbo. The dummy was a convenient prop in early film, as it could largely be operated on screen without any technical special effects. Dead of Night is the first identified example of a killer dummy in film, established its dummy Hugo by building the ideas of The Great Gabbo. There, the killer dummy became a stock character in horror for the following decades, appearing in numerous stories such as Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Twilight Zone, and the 1978 classic Magic. The relationship between the ventriloquist and the dummy influenced later killer characters, even though they moved away from strictly psychological elements towards the supernatural. More examples include The Devil Doll in 1936, the Living Doll episode of the television series Twilight Zone, and a clown doll from the film Poltergeist. And of course, everyone knows Chucky the doll from the Child's Play films, as well as many B-movie variations on homicidal doll themes, such as Dolly Dearest, Demonic Toys, Blood Dolls, and more. More recently, a character based off the doll Annabelle, owned by Ed and Lorraine Warren, have been featured in the Conjuring movie series. According to the Warrens, a student nurse was given the Annabelle doll in 1970. They said that the doll behaved strangely, and that a psychic medium told the student that the doll was inhabited by a spirit of a deceased girl named Annabelle. The student and her roommate tried to accept and nurture the spirit-possessed doll, but the doll reportedly exhibited malicious and frightening behavior. It was at this point that the Warrens say that they were first contacted. moving the doll into their museum after pronouncing it a demonically possessed object. The doll remained in its glass case at the Warrens Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, until the museum's closure over zoning violations. Joseph Laycock, a Texas State University assistant professor in religious studies, says most skeptics have dismissed the Warrens Museum as, in his words, full of a bunch of off-the-shelf Halloween junk, dolls and toys, books you can buy at any bookstore. Laycock calls the Annabelle legend an interesting case study in the relationship between pop culture and paranormal folklore, and speculates that the demonic doll trope popularized, again, previously mentioned films, Child's Play, Dolly Dearest, The Conjuring likely emerged from early legends surrounding Robert the Doll, as well as from the Twilight Zone episode released 5 years prior to the Warren story entitled The Living Doll, in which the character of the mother is named Annabelle. Laycock suggests that the idea of a demonically possessed doll allows modern demonologists to find supernatural evil in the most banal and domestic of places. Commenting on the publicity for the Warrens Occult Museum coinciding with the film release of The Conjuring, science writer Sharon Hill said that many of the myths and legends surrounding the Warrens have, quote, seemingly been on their own doing, and many people may have difficulty separating the Warrens from their Hollywood portrayals. Hill criticized sensational press coverages of the Warrens Occult Museum and its Annabelle doll. She said, in her words, like real Ed Warren, real-life Annabelle is actually far less impressive. Of the supernatural claims made by the Annabelle doll by Ed Warren, Hill says, we have nothing but Ed's word on this, and also for the history and origins of objects in the museum. The doll is also described in Gerald Brittle's 1980 biography from the Warrens, The Demonologist. The popularity of the Conjuring films and entertainment around haunted dolls has resulted in the sale of dolls claimed to be haunted on many online sites such as eBay, Amazon, and Etsy. According to Catherine Carlson of The New Yorker, sales listings are often accompanied by claims of paranormal phenomenon associated with the doll. Carlson wrote that such dolls bring with them a certain fascination to the regular doll that does not, since a haunted doll requires proof, or at least enough of which a backstory that the prospective buyer could embrace the possibility of the supernatural. According to folklore professor Libby Tucker, ghost tours, ads, and haunted hotels and other monetary transactions build on the pre-existing beliefs and narratives. The fact that people buy and sell ghostly materials takes nothing away from these materials' value for folklore researchers, which is considerable. The world's most famous haunted doll is that of Robert, who's allegedly haunted. He's on exhibit in the East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. Robert was once owned by a painter, author, and Key West resident Robert Eugene Otto. The doll originally belonged to Robert, described as an eccentric who belonged to a prominent Key West family. The doll was reportedly manufactured by the Steiff Company of Germany and purchased by Otto's grandfather while on a trip to Germany in 1904. It was given to young Otto as a birthday gift. The doll wears a sailor suit, which is likely the outfit that Otto wore as a child. The doll remains stored in the Otto family home at 534 Eaton Street in Key West while Otto studied art in New York and in Paris. Otto married Annette Parker in Paris in May 3, 1930. The couple returned to the Otto family home in Key West to live there until Otto died in 1974. His wife died 2 years later. After their deaths, the Eaton Street home contained the doll was sold to Myrtle Reuter, who owned it for about 20 more years until the property was then sold to the current owners, who operate it as a guest house. In 1994, the doll was donated to the East Martello Museum in Key West, where it became a popular tourist attraction. Now, the specific legend around this doll is that it has supernatural abilities that allows it to move, change its facial expressions, and even make giggling sounds. Some versions of this legend claim that a young girl of Bohemian descent gave Otto the doll as a gift or as, quote, retaliation for wrongdoing. Other stories claim that the doll moved voodoo figurines around the room and was aware that what went on around him, such as secrets passed or conversations happening in the room. Other legends claim the doll vanished after Otto's house changed ownership a number of times after his death. There's even one where a young Otto triggered the doll's supernatural powers by blaming his childhood mishaps specifically on the doll. According to local legend, however, the doll has caused car accidents, broken bones, job loss, divorce, a cornucopia of other misfortunes. The museum visitors supposedly experience post-visit misfortunes for failing to respect Robert. Another supposed haunted doll is called Letta the doll. Kerry Walton of Brisbane, Queensland in Australia has appeared on a number of television programs with a doll that he claims to have been found while visiting an abandoned building in 1972. According to Walton, he named the doll Letta Me Out because of its supposedly supernatural characteristics. Walton claims that people have seen the doll move in front of them and that the doll has left visible scuff marks all around his house. Another story, according to modern Japanese folklore, in 1918, a teenager named Suzuki purchased a large doll from Hokkaido for his younger sister, Okiku, whom he gave the name to the doll. When Okiku died, her family came to the belief that Okiku's spirit was inhabiting the doll, and the hair on the doll started to grow. The doll resides in the Manjini Temple in Hokkaido, where it's claimed that a priest regularly trims Okiku's still growing hair. Another story is made in England or Germany between 1910 and 1920, is named Mandy. It's a porcelain baby doll donated to the Museum of British Columbia in 1991 that is claimed to have, again, supernatural powers. Mandy's eyes supposedly follow museum visitors. The doll has been featured on several American television shows, including that of Montel Williams. After this quick message, we'll be right back. Hello there, listeners. Whether you're new or you've been with me from the start, a great way to catch up and dive deeper into the world of mythical true crime is to check out my earlier shows. I've covered everything from Bigfoot to aliens and ghosts. Take a moment and browse through the past episodes, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Your support means everything to me. Considering some of the psychological effects that killer toys or haunted dolls bring, dolls represent objects that appear corpse-like, or both alive and dead, creating a sense of the uncanny. Most American audiences have heard of the uncanny valley, which represents the combination of human and inhuman qualities that produce discomfort in a viewer. A good example of this is early Shrek films, where the special effects to create the human-like characters were just off enough to create discomfort in the viewer. The uncanny nature of a killer toy creates a strong visual element, allowing for a prominent role in visual media such as film. Creators of killer toy films invoke the uncanny valley a lot, in which the toy looks realistic enough not to be disconcerting without looking realistic enough to look natural. The human mind naturally likes to seek out human faces, and it's more inclined to interpret personality from an object with a recognizable face. This phenomenon in humans is also known as pareidolia, which is a tendency for a perception to impose meaningful interpretation on nebulous stimuli, usually visual, so that one detects an object, pattern, or some kind of meaning when there actually isn't any. Killer toys in film can produce horror by invoking uncertainty before revealing the toy's nature with subtle changes or movements to create suspense, which it's unclear whether or not the toy is acting autonomously. Sigmund Freud's analysis of uncanniness in his essay, The Uncanny, was informed by the phenomenon's role in horror, and it's also regularly been used as a reference for psychological effects that killer toys have on audiences. Freud assumed that children don't make the same distinction between animate and the inanimate, while adults have an aversion to this by blurring living and non-living things due to the repression of childlike ideas. Killer toy fiction that features artificial intelligence, as of late, can evoke additional sense of horror, not presented in stories based on occultism. These stories reflect fears that they're expressed in the real-world discussions about AI, providing a more plausible justification for the toy's behavior and or creating a villain that could conceivably exist in our real world. They also invoke the uncanny in the toy's personality as well as its appearance, with artificial intelligence providing near-human demeanor. Now, other themes killer toys feature prominently is contemporary Gothic fiction, for example. They are more commonly established as the type of occultism or spiritual possession in which a toy is inhabited by a demon or some other entity. Killer toy can be contrasted with stories which friendly toys come to life, again, such as The Adventures of Pinocchio or even Toy Story, as well as other science fiction stories like androids or automatons. In popular consciousnesses, killer toys may also be associated with the uncanny human-like constructs, such as golems, mannequins, scarecrows, and statues. Killer toys subvert the traditional association of childhood with innocence and dependence, to the point that the doll has become a shorthand for childhood in the horror genre. The image of a toy accentuates this theme, conflating the childish appearance of a doll with gratuitously violent and profane behavior. The threat of a killer toy includes both the threat of physical harm and the loss of innocence. The climax of killer toy fiction often involves a child killing or destroying the killer toy, granting agency to the child and completing, quote, a cycle of violence that exists between the toy and the child. Killer toys also invoke parental fears that children may become corrupted or that the parent may accidentally provide them with negative influence. Stories about killer toys often involve homes with a single parent of an only child, allowing for the killer toy to fulfill an emotional role for that lonely child. In these cases, the child character may develop an attachment to the toy, reminiscent to real-life projection of children's identities into dolls. The toy may also become dependent on the child to carry out its violence, creating a system of codependency and further blurring the individual identities of the child and the toy. The killer toy may also be used as a criticism for adulthood and consumerism, particularly how the concepts interact with children. Under this interpretation, however, the toy can be seen as carrying out revenge on adults as a proxy of that of the child. Feminine portrayals of killer toys rarely differ from masculine portrayals, with the focus typically being on the innocence and monstrosity rather than sexuality. One practical consideration for killer toys and films in particular is the need to convince the viewer that the toy is a legitimate physical threat to its victims. Due to the small size of most toys, and killer dolls are often depicted as using creative or sudden attacks as to not provide a good opportunity for self-defense. I think any one of us that has watched the Child's Play films know that if Chucky come running at us down a hallway, we would just kick the sucker out a window. Killer ventriloquist dummies invoke additional symbolic meanings by imbuing life into the toy that's already appeared to be living, and serves as an extension to the already living person. And this connection between the puppeteer and the puppet can invoke the idea of an evil doppelganger. The puppeteer has been recognized as a symbol for that extension of identity since ancient times, and the merging of identities between the puppeteer and the puppet have influenced the killer toy character way beyond its use with ventriloquist dummies. Dummies also reinforce the elements of childhood found in the killer toy fiction due to their small stature and childlike behavior while sitting on the ventriloquist's lap. Now, despite all this with the talk of killer dolls, the term voodoo doll commonly refers to as an effigy of which is typically used for insertion of pins. Such practices are found in various forms of the magical traditions of many cultures around the world. Despite its name, however, the voodoo doll is not prominent in African religions of Haitian Voodoo or Louisiana Voodoo. Members of the high priesthood of the Louisiana Voodoo have denounced the use of voodoo dolls as it's irrelevant to their religion. The association of the voodoo doll and the religion of voodoo was established through the presentation of the latter in Western pop culture during the first half of the 20th century, as part of like a broader negative depictions of black and Afro-Caribbean religions practiced in the United States. In John Huston Craig's 1933 book, Black Baghdad, The Arabian Night Adventures of Marine Captain of Haiti, a Haitian prisoner is described as sticking pins into an effigy to induce illness. Now, in the film, representations of Haitian voodoo and works of Victor Halperin's 1932 White Zombie and Jacques Tourneur's 1943 I Walked with a Zombie also involved the use of these dolls. Voodoo dolls are also featured in one episode of The Woody Woodpecker Show in 1961, as well as the British musical Lizzotomania, and films Creepshow, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, The Witches of Eastwick, Child's Play, and Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. By the early 21st century, the image of the voodoo doll has become practically pervasive. It's become a novelty item, available for purchase, with examples being provided in vending machines in British shopping centers. Even an article on, quote, how to make a voodoo doll, being included on WikiHow. Voodoo dolls were also featured in the 2009 animated Disney film, The Princess and the Frog, as well as Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. In 2020, Louisiana Voodoo High Priest Robbie Gilmore stated, in her words, "It blows my mind that people still believe voodoo dolls are relevant to voodoo religion. Hollywood really did us a number. We did not stab pins in dolls to hurt people. We don't take your hair and make a doll and worship the devil with it and ask the devil to give us black magic to get our revenge on you. It is not done. It won't be done. And it never will exist for us." Now, researching for this podcast, I spoke with my wife in detail about my opinion on if I think dolls are haunted. My opinion hasn't changed. I believe that if you were to buy a haunted doll on Amazon or eBay or wherever, you are not buying a haunted object. How I feel about the supernatural is once you purchase something like that, you're not buying a haunted object, but what you're doing is you're allowing something to attach itself to the object that you purchased. You're allowing something demonic or otherworldly to become part of your life. Much as if creating a ritual or doing an Ouija board, things of that sort, you're inviting something into your home. I think when you buy a haunted doll, you're doing the same thing, but it's not the doll that's haunted, it's you. You are inviting this entity into your life. And when it's in your life, for good or for bad, it's probably not in your best interest. So what did you think of tonight's stories? Haunted dolls really do seem to be everywhere, and everybody seems to be enjoying the Hollywood trope. But let me know in the comments, how do you feel about voodoo dolls, haunted dolls, and the like? And while you're sharing, please consider subscribing. I'm going to be adding new tiers to my Patreon, that of which will include early access to these episodes. So if you want to get these episodes earlier than their release date, sign up on my Patreon or continue to support me on Buzzsprout. They're the ones that host my podcasts. And every little bit goes a long way into helping me continue to provide this information for you and continue to upload. Speaking of uploading, YouTube has now updated their podcast section. Google Podcasts is no more, as many of you probably are aware. I still upload to all sites, including that of Apple, Spotify, and now YouTube podcasts. So if you like, you can drop me a line there. I do read comments, and if you have any suggestions for future shows, you can submit them in there as well. And that concludes another captivating episode, delving into the world of mythical true crime. I appreciate you joining me tonight as we listen to the facts from these true crime tales. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll uncover even more mysteries. Until then, thank you for listening to tonight's episode. Good night.